And the question is, can we develop enough technology that we're not just building in the same failed infrastructure that we have in the rest of the world with coal and fossil fuels, et cetera, and that we can get wind, solar, and whatever kinetic energy going through there to generate. And yeah, you just to see what's developing. Do you have any idea for how Africa is moving forward?
It's a great question. I mean, the one thing I'll say around costs and as people start thinking about how to approach fossil fuels, renewables, is like the status quo is at this point the most expensive option, right? That is the thing that we have to take into consideration. If you look at just the dramatic costs of solar and wind since last 7-10 years, it's pretty astronomical in terms of how cheap that's happened. And we saw that in Pakistan. Pakistan had a big solar boom where they basically built out a huge portion of what they were going to do over years, and they did it in a matter of months. It was 24
Wow.
months or something of building out, and it was people kind of, to answer that question around communal, people kind of looking at like TikTok videos, figuring out how to wire up solar on their roof, and then going and doing it. So that
No
is,
way.
yeah. I mean, it's a huge development. They called it a solar rush, basically, that happened in Pakistan. It was astronomical. A lot of people are looking at Africa now as being the next place where we might start seeing that similar kind of move, where you're going to start seeing people taking it into their own, because even just wiring up, they can do it off grid too. It's like you don't even have to wait for the large scale, for governments to come in and build large scale power lines and things like that. People can start powering homes and communities on their own, and kind of having these little microgrids set up for themselves. And so that's been a big area where people are really thinking about. And I think it just in terms of what's working in emerging markets, I mean, there's been a lot of work around, what kind of regulatory tools, market tools are going to make things better. And people have different opinions on that in terms of what you need, in terms of, should we bring in foreign companies in, having long-term auctions, competitive processes, and blended finance, and, how should we be going about doing some of that? But I do think there's a huge potential for Africa, and I think that they have, as a continent, I think that there is, other than South Africa, which is heavily relying on coal, most of the continent is sort of has built a lot of gas, and just as with coal and regions like Southeast Asia, what's happening with gas is very much an industry, and coming in and saying this is the safest bet. This is the surest thing. Right. And, building out those kinds of projects. And so that to me is really the choice that's happening right now within the region, is about gas or renewables is sort of what you're going to see it break one way or the other.
And why is like South Africa as an example? Because I spent some time there earlier this year.
Yeah.
As far as I know, it's the richest country on the continent. Why are they choosing to have coal continually when you see how expensive it is, how much sun they get? Like, why wouldn't they be rolling out renewables in a really big way?
I mean, it's a great question. I do think there is significant progress in South Africa around renewables actually right now. I do. I mean, honestly, I think it comes down to the same question about kind of any country that's heavily reliant on fossil fuels, especially if it's a producer. It really usually comes down to there's a lot of vested interests, and as a producer, there's always these questions around security and saying, if we have it under our territories and we can dig it out, then that's some kind of independence that gives us. In Europe, you're seeing kind of the opposite argument, which is like we could just use what's more secure than wind farms and solar. That's no one controls that. So I think that there's those kinds of questions that are still happening. But yeah, I mean, South Africa has a very powerful coal lobby, and I think you're seeing that. And another example, I think, would be India, which is another heavily major coal producer, which is also looking heavily at renewables. But you also have social infrastructures built around coal there. So a lot of the major state-owned enterprise for coal, in India is also, owns some of the hospitals and built some of the schools. And so those kinds of things, those kinds of infrastructures that you would also have to reposition and move away from, it makes things a little bit more difficult. And there's a much bigger economic transition project that has to happen. I think that's true of any kind of fossil fuel community and producer.